Waiting for motorbike. Waiting for motorbike. Oh my god, hey! Welcome back to my Stager YouTube channel. If you're seeing my face for the first time, hello! My name is Mickey Joe and I am obsessed with all things theatre. And this is my Stager YouTube channel. If you've never seen one of my videos before, this is where I come to share reviews of shows that I've been invited to go and see, or I take you to the theatre with me, or I just generally talk about all of the most recent news and rumours happening on Broadway and in the West End. All things musical theatre. Today, I want to tell you about a show I was invited to go and see at Theatre Royal Stratford East last week. And this is a show I've had my eye on for a little while, ever since I first saw them perform at West End Live last year. I am talking about Fantastically Great Women Who Changed History. This is a new musical adaptation of the very celebrated book by Kate Pankhurst, who is a descendant of Emmeline Pankhurst. I was just doing some Googling and apparently she did not know this for most of her life, which is insane because as soon as I saw her surname, I assumed it immediately. Although I guess context helped. So this is a show aimed at a family audience that talks about all sorts of monumental and iconic historical women with a sort of a contemporary, fun, youthful twist. It shares some producers with the hit show Six, it shares some cast members with the very original production of Six, and it definitely seems like it's trying to recapture some of that same energy, especially now that Six has become such a global phenomenon. But was it successful? Stay tuned and I will tell you all of my many thoughts about this production and give you my full review. But before that, check out this mega mix performance that they have at the end of the show. Didn't I tell you it was similar to Six? So I had a really great time at this show. I think my biggest apprehension going in was how juvenile it would be, because this is discernibly a show aimed at a young audience, which I think is very important and which I think is exactly the right thing for this show because it's informative, it's sharing really important historical figures and really important pieces of history, especially for young women. And packaged within that are these really important and really uplifting and really powerful messages. And I'm really glad that that is what is connecting with an audience of young theatregoers. I think theatre exists to entertain, but it does also exist to inform and be this positive driving force to educate and inspire. Oh, that was a good sentence. So it's definitely still what I would characterize as a family show. You know, there's things about the book writing, about the structure of the show, and about the portrayal of some of the characters that set it aside from having this more mature tone. It is definitely a show that has been written for children that can also be enjoyed by an adult audience. I would describe this as the best family theatre show that I have ever been to, but there's definitely certain things about it that keep it rooted in that genre, which is fine. If that's what they're going for, then that's a great choice. I do think that if you edited certain things, it would have a broader crossover appeal while still speaking to a young audience in a very powerful way, the way that Six still appeals to a very young fan base while still being just broad enough entertainment. But equally, if that's not what they want, there's no shame in directly speaking to the children in the audience and saying, this is something we have created for you. I think there's something really beautiful in that as well. This is a 4-star show for me. I think when you look at these star ratings, you have to look at each show's own individual goals and intentions and purposes, and I think within what this show is trying to achieve, it's doing it really, really well. There's a few things structurally that I'm going to expand on that I think would make it a slightly stronger piece of theatre, but once we get into it and once we start meeting all of these historical characters and they're interacting with our protagonist and they're interacting with each other, then we get into some really great theatre. I'll explain to you how this show works because this will make more sense. So once we're in the theatre, there's this kind of museum type set that we see on stage, and the 4 actresses that make up much of the show's cast enter through the audience pretending to be teachers on a school trip, and they sing this song on stage about how much they hate children on school trips. I think it's What I Wouldn't Give for a Class of Quiet Children, something like that, which, you know, if you didn't know, I am a teacher, so relatable. That opening number is an absolute belt fest, which when you have Renée Lamb and when you have Christina Modestou and you let them sing like that and go off, I'm thrilled to hear it, and I'm just happy to be there in the audience. However, if we're thinking about opening numbers as something to set up and characterize the rest of the show, I'm not sure that this achieves that necessarily as fully as it could. I mean, you never meet those characters again particularly, and that's not really what the show is about. Also, I don't love that it characterizes teachers as just being exhausted. I think the whole show is about these inspirational women and passing on these messages and this sort of generational sense of strength, and I would love if the teacher characters, you get a sense of it at the end, but I would love at the beginning if they could be characterized as more enthusiastic about teaching, which, you know, we are sometimes. After this song ends, you then have a late child running in, coming onto the stage. She is lost, she's separated from her main group, and she ends up going into this area of the museum that she's not meant to be in. Surprise, surprise, she ends up unearthing the spirits of these dead historical women. She meets Amelia Earhart, she meets Gertrude Ederle, she meets someone else. Oh, Sacagawea in that first section. And they sing a great song that kind of combines all of their ideas and all of their historical perspectives on different things in a very clever way. And they impart a certain message to her, and she takes like the most basic juvenile version of that message and tries to move forwards with that and apply it to some personal stuff that we're starting to learn more about in her life. Then she meets more historical characters, and then more after that, and it gets very structurally repetitive at this point. I think a little bit of a variation in this structure is what would make the show slightly less juvenile. It starts to feel more like a really well put together lesson plan, rather than something that's going to challenge a young audience a little bit more. And again, if this was not the intention and they just want to put on a really great piece of children's theatre, then they have exceeded in that already. One particular moment I really wish could become something bigger than what it is when you have Rosa Parks come on at the end, and she is talking to our protagonist, and then Anne Frank comes on as well, and this has the chance to be really meaningful and really impactful because of the nature of these characters, because of the gravitas and the seriousness of the messages that they are sharing. You know, you have Rosa Parks talking to a young black girl in the modern day. There's a chance for a real connection here. And it very much just touches on the surface level of their experiences and tries to put an inevitably positive spin on it all, so it's not too much of a downer, so it's not too heavy. And again, I get that. They've made a conscious choice to give you the primary school version of these stories. And Rosa Parks' character reprises a song that Frida Kahlo had sang previously. You're starting to get the vibe of how mad this show is now. And I just really wish that Rosa Parks had had her own song and had had a more powerful song and had had a song about resistance and a song about endurance and resilience, something aspirational and looking towards the future, but reminding us there's so much change that still needs to be affected even now. I feel like the scope of what these characters could have achieved was not fully realised. And very possibly that's because they didn't want it to get too heavy at this moment, which I understand. I just would have liked to touch on that in a little more depth. I want to talk about the costume design because I really enjoyed the costume design of this. They managed to portray these historical outfits but using modern elements. My favourite thing was Jane Austen's blue bonnet was done with a visor, and you could absolutely see who she was without her introducing herself, but it was just a clever and fun way of doing it. I love that they were all completely colour blocked as well. Amelia Earhart was in green head to toe, Jane Austen was in blue. The outfits they had during Frida Kahlo's number were great, very on theme, very Frida Kahlo-esque. I liked the suffragette outfits they were wearing when Emmeline Pankhurst came on. I liked their sort of suffragette colour camouflage trousers and the berets that they had, although I do get very triggered by the purple, white and green suffragette colours every time I see them now, because unfortunately they have been horribly appropriated by the anti-trans community. That's something I would have liked to have seen a little bit more of in this show, is more intersectional feminism that talks a little bit about trans issues. I just wanted at least one nod in there. And I know because there is trans representation on this show's creative team that is very much in the heart and the sentiment of this show, but if there was a nod to that, then I missed it. Very possibly there was something in the script that I just didn't quite pick up on, but I would love for that to be referenced as well, so that the feminism that we're bringing to this young audience is completely intersectional and applies to everyone. Let me talk now about the music, because I was prepared to come away from this and say that the score was not enduring as much as the Marlowe and Moss songs from 6, and then days later, these songs really grew on me more so than I was expecting them to, especially Deeds Not Words. That's an absolute suffragette banger. And it's not a surprise, because when you look at the people behind the music and lyrics of this show, you have Chris Bush, who also was the book writer, who co-wrote the lyrics, you have Miranda Cooper, and you have Jennifer DeSilvio. And Miranda and Jennifer seem to come from the world of pop songwriting, and they have some really exciting credits to them. And Miranda Cooper wrote the British gay anthem that is Sound of the Underground for Girls Aloud, so as far as I'm concerned, pop royalty. That's a great song. You can't tell me that's not a great song. And not every song in Fantastically Great Women has that strong a hook that is going to grab you. They're all really fun and enjoyable in the moment, but there's definitely a few that are really beginning to grab me in a big way. Oh gosh, all of the cast were fantastic in this show. Christina Modestou reminding us what an amazing voice she has, what an endearing presence that she is on stage. Renée Lamb had some really touching moments in her interactions with our main protagonist. Her character's name was Jade, she was played by Kudzai Mangombe, and she was really fantastic as well, really convincing in her youthfulness, even though I suspect she's a little bit older than the character that she's playing, because, well, I think she was like 13, and she's not 13, so I suspect definitely older than the character that she's playing, but was really great in portraying that and really connected, I felt, with all of the young people in the room. Elise Savu was understudying one of the tracks that played Frida Kahlo and Sacagawea and some other characters as well, I believe. She just had this really lovely presence on stage, which for this heartwarming and uplifting show I think is really important. It's another one like 6 where you just have to bring buckets of personality to whatever role it is that you're playing, especially when you're multi-rolling as different characters and when they're making these big entrances and they're only there for a couple of minutes and they're suddenly exploding out like it's Night at the Museum, but gals. Ladies' Night at the Museum. Oh my gosh, that's what this show should be called. Possibly my favourite though from the whole thing was Kirstie Skivvington. Kirstie, who has just finished understudying Kirstie Jansen in And Juliet, has now been touring with this show, having workshopped this role originally. She has come back to the role and she is fantastic. She plays Emmeline Pankhurst and a couple of other characters as well, but it's her performance as Emmeline Pankhurst that's really great here. She gets some fantastic material. She gets to do it in her own accent, I believe. Again, similar vibes to 6, but she delivers this thunderous message with her song Deeds Not Words. She raps so well, and what she does that's really clever, because this is a children's show, is she does it with this intensity and this frustration, but there's a twinkle in her eye throughout. So it's very charming, it's very endearing, and it's very welcoming. It's not unsettling in its assertiveness. It very much welcomes everybody in to be like, we are fighting for this together. I mean, this question really answers itself. I think it's so important that young people go and see this show. It's going to speak so profoundly and so powerfully, I am hoping, to young girls and young women, but also, as is always the way with these important messages for society, everyone needs to go and see this show. Everyone needs to go and gain this education and this understanding and these insights. So it's really important for young boys to go and see this show as well. I just want as many school groups as possible to go and see Fantastically Great Women Who Changed the World, and for it not to be an assumption that this is just a show for girls. This is a show for everyone to go and see, and understand and appreciate and enjoy and laugh and sing and dance, because it's also really, really fun. And with everything going on in the US right now and the ramifications that that's having here in the UK, I think this show is also really, really important. It speaks to a lot of messages that, even though they may be historical, we see that they are enduring. We see there are still so many fronts on which we need to fight and to advocate for equality and change, because there is still such a disparity in the way that men and women are treated in society worldwide. And I believe in the power of theatre to change hearts and minds, and I'm hopeful that this show can play a small part in driving that conversation. It's ridiculous we're still having that conversation in 2022, but that's a different story. Thank you so much for watching today's video. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, make sure to subscribe to my Stagey YouTube channel for plenty more content just like this. Also, if you want to support me as a Stagey content creator, head over to patreon.com/MickeyJoeTheatre, where you can gain access to all sorts of exclusive photo and video content. I hope that everyone is staying safe and that you have a stagey day. For 10 more seconds, I'm Mickey Joe Theatre. Oh my god, hey. Thanks for watching, have a stagey day. Subscribe!